Hello everyone, welcome to DNSQL. My name is Dinesh Priyankara, Data Platform MVP and Business Intelligence Architect. Let's talk about the Power BI integration into Jupyter Notebook. As you see, I'm going to focus on or discuss two things with this video. First one, embedding Power BI reports to Jupyter Notebook, which is not something new. This was announced in 2021. Okay. And the second part, creating Power BI reports directly in Jupyter Notebook. This is something new and it was announced last month, April 2023. So let's talk about the Power BI integration with Jupyter Notebook. Let me take you through the agenda. This is what I have planned for this video. So we'll be discussing the older one first, embedding Power BI reports into Jupyter Notebook. Let me show you the way of configuring the environment and then how we can get the report into Jupyter Notebook and what other things we can do with that report. Okay, that's going to be the first part. Second part is completely on the last release related to this. So let's see how we can get a new Power BI report created within the notebook, right, without using Power BI desktop. And then what are the other things we can do with the report, and at the end, how we can publish that report into Power BI service. So all these things will be shown as a part of the demo. Okay, these are the things you are going to see as a part of the demo. I'm going to use Anaconda because rather than using Jupyter Notebook directly, I always prefer to use Anaconda. So I'll be creating a new environment in Anaconda for doing this demonstration. I'll be showing the way of opening Power BI report, and then what are the other things we can do, things like adding interactive filters, and then accessing visuals, getting data from visuals, and then what else we can do once we have the data extracted from these visuals. Okay. And then the next part of the demo is all about creating a Power BI report. So let's see what are the codes we have to write for getting the data set ready, and then how we can create the report and then publish that report into Power BI service. Okay, so that's the agenda. So let's start with embedding Power BI reports in Jupyter Notebook. Why we need a feature like this? Why we have to embed a Power BI report into Jupyter Notebook? So let's say I'm performing an experiments against a data set, and I know that set of reports have been created using this data set, and those reports have been published in Power BI service. So if I have a look on these reports, that will be helpful for my experiment. So one thing I can do is generally what I have to do is I have to go to Power BI service, open the report and go through the visuals and data and insights, things like that. What if I can open the same report within the Jupyter Notebook and do the same? So that's the facility we get with this feature. So I can get the Power BI report into my Jupyter Notebook. I can interact with it. I can, when I get the report open in my Jupyter Notebook, I can use the existing filter, or I can have my own rules for filtering data. Okay. Not only that, I can get some data related to visuals downloaded to my notebook. I can simply get it into a data frame and continue with my experiments. All right. So this is the usage of this feature. Let me take you through a few more points. Now, if I want to have this facility, first thing, I need to have this Power BI client Python library installed in my Jupyter Notebook. Okay, so it's going to be very simple installation. I'll be showing you the way of installing it. So I can simply use pip for installing Power BI client. All right. So once you have the Power BI client installed in your environment, then you can use it within your notebook. All right. So in order to get a report open in your notebook, you need to make sure that you get yourself authenticated. That's how you access Power BI, right? So there are two ways of getting the authentication done: device code login authentication and interactive login authentication. So device code login authentication works like this. So when you instruct to a notebook saying, okay, I want to access Power BI using a specific code, right? Then it will give you a URL and the code. So what you have to do is you have to get that URL into a different browser or different tab, and then go to that web page, and then you can use that code given for starting the authentication process. So once the code is accepted, you'll be prompted for signing into Power BI, and once the signing in operation is done, you can go back to your notebook and see. So if the signing operation is successfully completed, you'll be seeing another message saying, yes, you have been authenticated. Now you can access the report. So that's going to be the first way, right? Second one is interactive login authentication. When it's come to interactive login authentication, you are not going to see a URL. So it's basically opens another tab and it will prompt you for signing into Power BI service. Once the signing operation is completed, you can simply close that tab and then go back to Notebook and continue with it. Okay, so that's the difference between these two. I'll show you both techniques as a part of my demo, right? So once authentication is done, then you can simply pass the report ID along with your workspace ID to get the report open within your notebook. All right. So when you open the report, if you want, you can use existing filters for get the data set filtered, right? In addition to these existing filters, you can have your own filters. Okay, you can have your own filters in Notebook, right? You can have it as a drop down, you can have it as a button, right? So then you can use these filters for filtering data in your report. That's what we see as custom filters. So it doesn't mean that you're going to add some filters to Power BI report. You'll be having all these things with your Notebook. Okay, you will understand when you see the demo, right? So in addition to that, I can simply go through the objects in your reports, like for example, pages, visuals. I can get these objects loaded into a variable, then I can iterate through these collections and access individual pages or individual visuals. Okay, and if I want to get the data downloaded from this particular visual, now for example, let's say I want to get the data downloaded related to this table. Okay, so I can access this visual and then simply instruct to Notebook saying I want to get the data related to this visual into a data frame. So once I have the data set, I can perform my own experiments against the data set. So that's the facility you get with this feature. Now let's have a look on the latest, creating Power BI reports directly in Jupyter Notebook. Now, this is a new facility for visualizing your experimental data. So when we work with notebooks, when we perform an experiment against the data, what we do is we get the data loaded from multiple sources and then perform some transformations. And then we try to visualize and see whether everything has been done properly. Okay. And if he feels like, okay, this needs more adjustment or this needs some business logic applied. So we do all of these things and then again visualize. So this is how you generally work with notebooks, right? You always visualize experimental data. We know that Jupyter Notebook has, when it's come to this environment, it has various ways of getting visualization done. There are multiple types of Python packages or some other packages available for visualizing data. So consider this is as another way of visualizing data. So you can use Power BI for visualizing data. Now, do not consider this as something like Power BI Desktop, which can be used for creating your own report by dragging visuals and then place all these visuals wherever you want and then configure these visuals with the properties of the data set. No, it's not like that. So when you say that, or when you instruct the Jupyter Notebook saying, I want to get a new report created, it uses quick report facility. So quick report facility is something you have already seen with Power BI service, and it is available in Power BI Desktop as well. So you can simply upload a data set and then ask Power BI to go through the data set and suggest some visuals. So you are going to see the same thing with this. But the good thing is you can make some adjustment and then publish the report if you feel like it is something important for your organization or the business, or it is something important for other colleagues, right? So then you can publish, right? So let's have a look on certain other things related to this facility. So you need to have Power BI client just like the previous one. You need to make sure Power BI client is installed, right? You can access the methods, functions available in Power BI clients for creating reports. Okay, that's the first thing. And the second thing is authentication. We know these two types of authentications: device code login authentication and interactive login authentication. So we can use these two for getting ourselves authenticated, right? Otherwise, you'll not be able to create reports and publish reports, right? So we talk about quick report facility. So what you're going to see is a report with set of visuals which have been all automatically created based on your data set. And you cannot do much modification to these visuals. You can make some modification to visual level filters, but you cannot add filters like page level filters or report level filters. No, those are not possible. You cannot create new visuals as well. Okay, I told you this is not Power BI desktop, so you cannot create new visuals, but you'll be able to make adjustments for a visual that have been automatically created. For example, I can select one of the visuals and then say that, okay, for x-axis I want to use this field instead of the one that I've been already configured. I want to use this let's say I have a field called sales amount, so I want to use sales amount for y-axis, and the aggregation is not sum. I want to use average. So you can do adjustments like that, but not much. Okay, so once everything is done, you can save it. So when you save it, you have to give a name, right? And then you can select the workspace. So once the saving part is done, the report will be automatically pushed into Power BI service. Okay, that's how it works. There's another facility called personalizing visuals, right? What it means is when you make some adjustment for the visual, let's say you make you change fields and you change the aggregation, that stop regeneration of that visual. If you deselect selected fields or select new field that causes regeneration of the report, it will regenerate all the visuals except the one that has been changed. Okay, so you can stop regeneration by making some adjustment for the visual. Right? So that's how all these things work. Now it is time for the demonstration. So let me open Anaconda and I'm going to create a new environment. Let's get the Power BI client installed and see all of these things. Okay, this is my Anaconda navigator. So what we have to do is we need to click on launch for opening Jupyter Notebook. But this is my default one, root. I have already installed Power BI client to this. So in order to show you the way of installing Power BI client, let me click on environments and I'm going to create a new environment. Let me name it, let's say env Power BI 02, and it picks the latest of Python. That's all. I'm going to click on create. So now the environment is going to be created. Okay, creation is completed. So we are in Power BI 02 environment. I can check and see whether Power BI client library is already installed. So as you see, when I make a search for Power BI, I don't see anything in the list. So which means I need to install Power BI client. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on home and then check and see whether Jupyter Notebook can be used. So since it's a new environment, I don't see a launch button. What I see is install. So I'm going to click on install for getting the Jupyter Notebook installed. Once it is installed, I'm going to click on launch for opening the Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter Notebook is ready. I'm going to click on launch for opening it. Let me create a folder first. I'm going to click on new and then click on folder. It is created and this is the folder. I'm going to rename it. So let me rename this as demo. Right. So I'm going to open the demo and then I'm going to create a new Python notebook. First thing we have to do is install Power BI client, but I can actually try and see whether I can access libraries, functions in Power BI client without installing it. It's not possible, but just to write a code for testing purposes. So import, let me say report, and we need models as well. So I'm going to execute this, shift and enter, and I should see an error message. All right, so it says Power BI client is not available. So let's see the way of installing Power BI client. Let me insert a cell above, right? So one of the ways of installing Power BI client is I can simply use pip install and then Power BI client here, right? I can simply execute this, or else I can go to the previous tab and then open the terminal, okay? And then I can do the same. No differences, okay? Let's do it here. So I'm going to say pip install Power BI client. Let's see. So it starts the installation. It will take about, generally it takes about 20-30 seconds, depends on various other factors. Installation is completed. So let's go back to the notebook, and I'm going to execute the second cell. It is being executed. So I should be able to continue without seeing any errors. See, no errors. So execution is completed. So I don't want to execute the first cell, but this is also another option. All right. Okay, so we have imported required libraries, reports, and models. Next thing is get the Power BI workspace ID and the report ID. All right. So I'm going to open a new tab and then open Power BI. I have already signed in. So this is my Power BI workspace, okay, which is called in SQL demo. And as you see, it has two data sets, okay, and one report, right? So I'm going to use this reports. Let me click on this reports for getting it open. So in order to see this report in my Jupyter Notebook, I need two things. The first thing is the workspace ID. So this is the workspace ID in this case. And the second thing is the report ID, which is this. So you need to make sure you copy these values and then use it in Jupyter Notebook. Let me go back to Jupyter Notebook, and I'm going to declare two variables. Let me say workspace ID equal, I'll copy that and paste, and then the report ID. Right, let me go here and then copy the report ID first and then paste, go back and then get the workspace ID and then set this value to workspace ID variable. All right, let me execute this. Done. So the next part is authentication. So let's check both authentication method, device login or device code login authentication and interactive login authentication. Let me take a copy of the code I have already written. Right, see, so I'm importing device code authentication from Power BI client.authentication. All right, and then I'm creating this authentication object by calling device login authentication. So I hope you remember the discussion. When I execute this, I should see a URL with the code. So what I have to do is I have to click on that URL and then pass this code for starting the authentication. So let me click on this, paste the code, click on next, and I can see my account. I have already signed into Power BI, so I don't want to enter the user ID and password again. Just click on it. Then you'll be seeing this message. Are you trying to sign into Power BI Client integration? Yes, click on continue. So if you go back to your notebook, you should see a message saying device flow authentication is successfully completed. All right. So now I should be able to access this report. But before accessing the report, let's try out the other authentication method, which is interactive login authentication. So I'm going to clear the output and restart the kernel. Let me click on this. Done. Okay. So I need to import these reports and models libraries again, and then execute the code related to workspace ID and report ID. So I'm not going to execute this code, device login, code login authentication. Let me put a new code. So it's the same thing, Power BI client authentication, but this time it is interactive login authentication. Let me execute this and let's see how it works. All right. I'm seeing a new tab and it says authentication is completed. Why I'm seeing like this? Because I have already signed into Power BI. If not, I'll be prompted to signing in. Once the credentials are entered, I should be able to see this message. All right. So I can close this tab and then go back to my notebook and it says successfully completed. All right. So authentication is done. Either this technique or this technique, we should be able to continue. Now what I have to do is I need to open my report. So in order to open the report, I need to call report function. So let me again copy and paste this code. I'm going to create a variable called report, but for that, I'm going to call a function called report, which needs workspace ID, report ID, and the authentication object, right? Now, the workspace ID has to be passed to a parameter called group ID. When it's come to Power BI, we call the workspaces as group as well. So the parameter name is group ID, but the variable name we created is workspace ID. So you pass workspace ID to group ID and the report ID and the authentication. All right. Since we executed this, I'm going to use interactive OR. So once it is done, I can simply call the report. Let's execute. I have noticed that in some cases, you don't see the report. You'll be seeing the report word as the output. You don't see the report, but you'll be seeing the report word. So if you experience something like that, refresh the page by pressing something like Control F5. Then you'll be able to see the report. Okay. See, I can see my Power BI report, and I can do the all the things generally I can do with Power BI. For example, I can click on this to get all other visuals filtered for the selected country, or I can expand this drop down and select a different value for filtering data. So everything works just like the way you do things with Power BI service. Okay, right. Now this is how you get your Power BI report into Jupyter Notebook. Now let's see how we can do something additional. Let's see how we can get a new filter created in Notebook and then use that filter for filtering this Power BI report. So I'm going to create a function for that. Let me copy the code I have already written and then paste here. So this is the code. Okay, so it's a function filter report, and I accept a parameter called country, and then I form a JSON document called country filter, which has schema. Okay, and the schema has to be powerbi.com/product.schema/basic. So what is this? This is something related to Power BI APIs. Okay, so Power BI API allows you to create filters like this. There are multiple types of filters. I'm using basic, so there are advanced one, top, and multiple type of filters. Check the description of this video. You will be seeing the URL for seeing all these filters. Okay, go through the page. You can understand how you can use those the commands and the other items given with that page for creating a filter like this. So I'm going to say schema is the basic one, and my target is a table called sales territory. This report has been created based on AdventureWorks database. So if you have worked with AdventureWorks database, you know these tables. So the table is sales territory, and I want to use the column called country region code for filtering, right? And operator is in values. All the values I pass through this filter. Okay, so that's how I form it. And then I can call report filters function of report, the one we have created here. Okay, so it has a method called report filters. So when you execute this, it will clear out all the filters that have been already added, and then we can call update filters by passing this form object. Okay, so let me execute this. Method is created, right? In order to have this filter in my notebook, I need to import interact from IPy widgets. So let me take the whole code again and then paste it here, right? So I import interact from IPy widgets, and then I call interact method, and it needs 2 parameters. So the first parameter is filter report. Okay, that's my method. Okay, and it needs some values for country. So I'm going to pass these values as a collection to the country parameter. Okay, let's see what will happen when we execute this. Right, so I can see a filter called country now, which has multiple items like CA, US, all these are country. And don't know whether you notice or not, my report has been already filtered. See, Canada has been already selected. The whole thing has been filtered for Canada now, right? Let's let me scroll down and then select something else, something like, let's say Australia. If I select Australia, this report will be automatically filtered for Australia. So this is called interactive filters. It will take some time. So it is getting the reset. I should see Australia is getting filtered. See, Australia is selected and all other visuals are getting filtered for Australia. Okay. So this is how you set interactive filters with the notebook. Let's check one more thing. If I want to get some data downloaded from one of these visuals, that is possible with Power BI client. Okay. So what I have to do is I need to access the page, then access the visual, and then call a method to get the data from that visual into a data frame. So how, there are multiple ways of doing it. You can simply, if you want, you can iterate through all the objects. Let's have a look on that first. How can I iterate a collection? Okay. For example, let me take a code. I can access all the pages in this report object. Okay. In this report object by calling get pages. Okay. And I can list out all the page names. Let me execute this. I have only 2 pages. Okay. As you see, my page names are page 1 and page 3. But what I see here is report selection and some ID. This is how Power BI maintains page names, even though we have our own names. That is called as display name. All right. So if you want, you can get all this information. For example, say I'm calling the method again, get pages into pages. Okay. And then I'm going to say, give me the name of the first page. That is called page name. And then give me the display name from the first page. Okay. So let's see the values. Let me comment this and then run. Now see, display name is page 1, page name is report selection. Okay, so this is how you get more properties. What are the all, if you want to see all the properties related to the pages, I can remove, I can uncomment this and then execute. I should see all the values. Okay, or else let me type pages here, then I can see values properly. See, the name, property, display name is active, visibility, and a couple of other properties with values. So this is how you access pages, visuals. Let's try to get data. We have to import 2 things. One is called string IO from IO package, and other one is pandas, right? So let me get the code again. Importing required libraries. Get the next code, which is this. All right. See, I'm using report object, and I'm going to say export visual data. It needs page name. Okay, not the display name. Okay, not the display name, page name. So I have already taken page name. Okay, right, which is this. Okay, and then it needs visual name. So I need to access the visual name or get the visual name. And the third parameter is rows. By default, it gives you only 10 rows. I'm passing 1000, right? Unfortunately, it does not extract all the records it has. You have to pass a number. If you do not pass it, it will give you only 10 records. So I'm passing just 1000, and then export data. Okay, that parameter is all about how you want to get the data set. You want to get the entire data set, or you want to summarize. So you can simply say underline. Okay, so that's one way of getting data set. Okay, or else you can simply say summarize. You can say models dot export data type dot, instead of underline you can say summarize. Okay, and then once we have data in the exported data, I'm going to use string IO for get it sort of formatted, right? And then so what happens is it creates sort of a comma separated data set, and then I can use read CSV for reading data from this formatted data set. Okay, and I can get it loaded to a data frame. After that, I can simply display data. But before that, I need the visual name. Let me have a new cell here. I'm going to use this code for getting the visual. So as you say, report, visuals on the page, and the page name. So we have the page name, and I'm going to access the first visual, right? And then get that visual name for this variable. Let me comment this. We don't need this. Execute. This has been already executed, but I can execute it again. And now we have all the parameters required for export visual data. Let's see the data set. All right, so I can see the entire data set. So after that, I can simply use this data set for performing various type of experiment. Just to show you, something you can do. For example, if I want to aggregate data, I can say, okay, group by month name, online order flag, and show me the subtotal, right? Something like this. So it shows the count of subtotal, right? If you want to have the aggregation, you can use function like all these are Python code. So I'm not going to show all the things that can be done with the data frame. If you're familiar with the data frame, you can simply use it for your own experiments. So this is the first part, right? Now let's have a look on report creation within Notebook. For that, let's create a new Python notebook. Let me go into this window and then create a new Python workbook. Okay. And I'm going to use a simple CSV file called sales CSV, which has a couple of columns. I have already placed that into this folder. If I go to demo, you can see the sales CSV file. Okay. So this is what I'm going to use for creating a data set, and then I'll be using that data set for or data frame for creating the Power BI report. Okay, right. Now we don't need to install Power BI client because it has been already installed. All we need is to get the required items imported. So I'm going to import, as you see, quick visuals and get dataset config from Power BI client, and I need to have pandas as well. So let me execute this. And after that, all I have to say is, read data from my CSV file and then load it to my data frame. So I'm going to call the data frame as df. I'm simply calling pd dot, that's from pandas, read CSV. And if I execute this, I can see the data set. So this is the data set. Okay. So you can think about, all type of transformation you can do. So assume that you have done many different type of transformations in the data set and you want to first visualize it. And if you feel like the output is really important, you can publish it to Power BI. Okay. So we know that we have multiple libraries available in this environment for visualizing, but let's see how we can use Power BI. So we know that we can use multiple techniques for authentication. So let's use device authentication this time, and let me create device auth as well. Let's execute. I have the URL. Let me copy the code. So you have already seen this, so you know how it works. All good. And I'm going to click on continue. And let me go back to my Jupyter Notebook. I can see the success message. All right. So I've been authenticated. Now let's see how we can get this data set into a Power BI report. Now see. Okay. So I'm going to say quick visualize. This is the method, and pass the config. Call a function called get dataset config, which was imported as a part of our first cell. Okay, and all I have to do is just pass the data frame for that. When I pass the data set, that's where we see the quick report part. So it will go through the data set. It will try to understand the numeric values, the other attributes, and then it try to suggest some visuals. Okay, so let's have this one call after this, and let me execute. So it is creating the Power BI report now based on the data set we have passed. So it reads, all the numeric columns and then decide the aggregation and what are the other columns that have to be used for something like x-axis or as a slicer. So this is what we get. Okay, so we have multiple visuals, and I can see all my field list. I don't have much properties, so in that case we'll not be able to make some good visuals, but this is what happened, right? So it gives us a report with ready-made visuals, or sort of a recommended or suggested visuals. Now see, if I select another column, this is getting regenerated. Okay, so whenever I make changes, things are getting regenerated. Okay, now if I want to make sure first thing, it stopped regenerating one of my visuals, plus the second thing, I want to have my own properties and own aggregation for this particular visual. What I can do is I can call personalize method and then make adjustment. See, when I move the mouse over the visual, I can see two icons. The first icon is personalize, and the second icon is ellipsis button, which has multiple options. Okay, so let's click on the personalized one. I can change the chart. Let's change it as a column chart. And then x-axis, let me say I want to have something like product ID. And the y-axis, let's say I want to have something like amount. And if I want to change the aggregation, I can click on this ellipsis button. Then it shows me all the aggregate functions. I can change it. Likewise, I can add legend and various other things. Okay, so this is how you personalize the visual. All right. So let's say you have done all of these things, and you don't like other visuals, but you have no way of removing them. But you want to make sure that this report is getting published, and users can simply use this dataset for creating new visuals or new reports. So in that case, what you have to do is you click on save. Then you have to give a name. Let me say new insights. Okay, and I'm going to select the same workspace. Right, I'm going to click on continue. So the report is saved. So let's go to Power BI workspace. Where is it? This one. And let me go to the workspace. Now I can see a new report and the new data set. See, new insight, the data set and the report. If I click on the data set, I should be able to create a new report using this data set. All right. So this is how, let me go back to my Jupyter Notebook. So this is how you create Power BI reports within the Jupyter Notebook, and then make adjustment, and if needed, you can publish it. Demo is done. I hope you understood the way of opening Power BI reports in Jupyter Notebook and creating Power BI reports in Jupyter Notebook. If you have any question, please add it as a comment. I'll make sure that you have the answer. That's all with this demo. Thanks for watching.